Listen to another great saying of Jesus. The first is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength." The reason he said the first is because he'd just been asked a question. Actually, he was engaged in a series of questions and debates and discussions, if you will, with the religious leaders, and they were trying to trap him and trick him and trying to figure out another way yet to try to dispose of him as a threat to their authority and their rule as religious leaders. And so Jesus, of course, being the master of every situation, he doesn't bite in and pick up on one of the little lesser commandments that they tended to argue about all the time. He cuts right to the chase. And really, this is not an original saying with Jesus. He's quoting from the Old Testament, from Deuteronomy chapter 6, a very famous line. In fact, it was so important that by the time of Jesus, and really before that, faithful Jews quoted this very passage every day, twice, as a part of their spiritual practice. And so it probably for the lawyer or the scribe who asked him this question, it was one of those, oh my goodness, yes, of course that's the first commandment. And of course he gives a second commandment. We'll talk about that in our next video. But think with me for a second, the magnitude, the wonder of what Jesus says. The first and greatest commandment is to love God with, and I'm going to paraphrase here just for a moment, with your whole self, with everything that you are. And the four components that he brings to that, you're to love him with all your heart. You know, the heart is the will, the part of you that Jesus put such a premium on in his teaching. You're to love him with your soul, that eternal part of you that's going to live forever. You're to love him with your mind. The very way you think is to reflect a love for God in every way. And you're to love God with all your strength. And that includes your physical strength, your emotional strength, even your money, your time, things like that. That's a part of your strength. So to love God with your whole self, it's a matter of priorities, really. And it's like today, if someone were to come to you and they figured you're a person who could answer questions for them religiously, and they said, now really, which is more important, to go to church or to have a personal relationship with God? Or they might ask you an even more specific question like, well, now, really, which is most important, just to believe in Jesus or be baptized in his name? And it's interesting because Jesus did put a premium on both of those things. Well, you can have those kinds of discussions, but why not first do what Jesus did and cut to the very heart of the matter, the chase, and say, listen, we can talk about all those things, but I want to make sure we understand this. The first commandment, the greatest commandment, is to love God with everything we are. Share this verse with them and then talk about how important it is to love one another. You know, when we get the first priority right and our second priority right, after that, all those other things, which are important, tend to fall in place just where they need to. And that's an important lesson for us to learn from our Lord Jesus. Let me share something with you, kind of fun for a moment. Years ago, for a number of years, I directed a week of church camp, Christian camp, for 15 and 16-year-olds. And I learned a whole lot about the psychology and the spiritual strength and so forth of 15 and 16-year-olds. But one of the things that's most interesting to observe is, while at that age they're suddenly trying to be so mature and so adult and everything, when we'd go to campfire at night, late in the evening, there was a part of that. Of course, we had a devotional at the end and sang some beautiful devotional songs. But before that, we'd sing these silly campfire songs. And you know what the favorite one was? Are you ready for this? It had been popular for decades and was a hit song at one time called the Hokey Pokey. And of course, those kids, they just got into that. And I'm not going to demonstrate the Hokey Pokey here on the video for you today, if that's all right. But it was interesting because, and I'm not going to go through the whole song, but you know, I was sitting there one night. I've been doing a lot of teaching during the week about these very principles of putting God first and then loving others. That's the second commandment. And it occurred to me that a lot of Christians kind of act like the Hokey Pokey. They put the right arm in and the right arm out, their left arm in, their left arm out. They put part of themselves in to the will of God and follow it in some ways. And you can go through the whole song, of course. But when they got to the part where you put your whole self in, you're supposed to realize when you put it all in with God, when you make this commitment to love him with everything you are, You're not ever supposed to pull your whole self out. You're supposed to stay right there and grow and flourish, learn to do all the rest of the commandments under God's will. We'll continue this in our next discussion, but particularly on the second commandment. Jesus gave him a second one, and that's to love your neighbor as yourself. Please join us at that time.